And we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to State of React Ecosystem. So excited to have some of our amazing panelists here today and some amazing updates. We're going to have some really awesome conversations about React. And I'm going to go ahead and share my slides really quickly. Oh, it's funny. Hello. Okay, there we go. I'm looking at my slides on the screen, but like not my actual slides. I'm confused. All right, so State of React Ecosystem. Going to be talking about some amazing things. I wanted to thank my team over at This.Labs. We're about a 50-person consultancy. It's pretty exciting, but if my team wasn't enabling me to do all the things I love, which is basically everything related to community, definitely would not be able to do all the great things we're able to do for the community. We have a lot of amazing clients, so that's always exciting. Always looking for new and interesting work. So if you're hiring, let us know. Also, we have an amazing team that's growing. So if you want to come hang out, email me. That's how I make friends. I do still do all the screenings. We just released a really cool open source project that you can not only contribute to, but also something that we wanted to release to help people figure out what technologies to use, because I think everybody's experienced the paralysis of figuring out what on earth to use, what libraries to compare, et cetera, et cetera. So React, Angular, and Vue.framework.dev, you can check them out. Submit a PR if you hate it, issues. And then, Tom, I don't know if you monitor those, but, yell at Tom. Just kidding.
Yep. I'll probably review your PRs if you contribute. So go ahead and contribute.
Yes. We have a lot of really interesting events coming on. So next week is JavaScript Marathon, where Michael will actually also be presenting. Kent has presented in the past before as well, where, it's basically a week of free trainings. So check that out. Starts July 18th. State of Hello CMS is coming up as well. State of Vue is happening. And then we have State of Web Components happening as well. Woman in Tech Monthly Mentoring, that's just my favorite. We had it yesterday as well. Just like coming and hanging out with a bunch of women for like an hour and talking. Doesn't matter what level you are, but just hanging out privately in a little Zoom. State of Web Performance as well happens August 23rd. So yeah, check those things out. I'm excited about those. My name's Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I'm the CEO of This.Labs. And then Tom is my co-host. Hi, Tom.
Hello. Happy to be here.
And Tom is the master of amazing shirts. So whenever you see Tom, if you see a person in a Hawaiian shirt, like it's like, is that Tom guy? Like it is.
I need to update my little avatar there where I'm in a suit, because I'm never in a suit. It's always true. Hawaiian shirts.
I was about to say that picture feels very misleading.
I made that illustration before I was in tech, when I had to actually dress a certain way in an office. Never again.
That's so funny. Yeah. So reason to join tech. You can wear whatever you want. I feel that. Amazing panelists here today. Going to go ahead and just have everybody do a quick 10-second intro. And then we'll move on to kind of a roundabout of updates. But Shruti, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Shruti Kapoor. I am a software engineer at Slack, and my title is a lead member of technical staff. So instead of going with that title, I just say software engineer. Super nice to be here. Excited to talk about React. You can follow me on Twitter at ShrutiKapoor08.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Erickson. I am a senior front-end engineer at Replay, where we're building a time-traveling debugger for JavaScript, and also I do a few things related to Redux.
Hi, I am Paige Niedringhouse. I am a staff software engineer for an IoT startup called Blues Wireless, and I am also a co-host of the React Roundup podcast and the author of Modernizing Enterprise React Apps for Newline.
Hello, I'm Kent C. Dodds, and I have a cut on my chin. So that's what the Band-Aid is all about. I'm the co-founder and director of developer experience at Remix. I created testingjavascript.com and epicreact.dev. And I really like JavaScript, React, and Remix.
Hi, my name is Dominic. You can find me online as TKDodo almost everywhere. I work as a front-end tech lead at Verity, but I guess I'm here because I maintain the popular open source library React Query, as you can see on my t-shirt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Liendo, Senior Developer Advocate over at AWS, specifically on the Amplify team. You can find me online at MT Liendo, and I typically rant about all things AppSync, GraphQL, front-end, etc. Pretty much putting your front-end application on the cloud.
Cool, I love it. Well, thanks so much all for being here again. And let's go ahead and move on to, well, thank you for joining. Had to do that. Let's go ahead and move on to quick updates. I'm just gonna go like this and say, Dom, do you want to go first? Give us an update on TanStack.
Yes, definitely. So very sad that Tanner can't be here today to talk about all the amazing things that he's done to the TanStack and the various libraries that are in it. But what I can share with you, if I can share my screen, I hope that works. Oops. Okay. Let's share this one here. So what we've been working on, and also I've been working on a lot lately, is the new version of React Query version 4 for the last, let's say, half year, a bit longer than that. This has been in the makings. And as you can see, this is a blog post that's not yet live. So this is a preview. It has been renamed to TanStack Query. Like all the other libraries that Tanner has created, or most of the libraries, we have TanStack Table now, there's TanStack Virtual, and there will also be TanStack Query as the next major version. And first of all, I also want to apologize to people if they try to access the old docs, because if you go to the old docs, we have already redirected them to the new docs, which has caused a bit of confusion because you can't actually install it the way as it's been described here, because we're still actively working on that. Got a bit of a delay because vacations. I've been on vacation for the last 2 weeks. Tanner is on vacation right now. So we're just trying to find the time to sync up and then actually roll out the release. It's going to happen very, very soon. I know I've said that in the past before, but we last minute, we said, okay, let's add React 18 support. And then it took some time. Okay, and last minute, we also said, let's make it the agnostic one with the TanStack query. We don't want to do this a bit later. But feature-wise, it's actually been complete for quite some time. And what we have as new features is a new way to support offline mode. So that means React Query or TanStack Query doesn't have any implications or assumptions about the network anymore. So you can really, it has evolved to an async state manager. You can use it to produce a promise however you want. Doesn't have to be over the wire, and it will also work if you're offline. If you don't have a network connection, it will give you a new paused state that you can then check and provide a better UX for your users. The other thing are the stable persisters. They have been experimental for quite some time. It's a way to take the query cache and persist it somewhere else. For example, local storage, or if you're using React Native, you can use async storage to give an even faster startup time by reading if the user has already loaded it there. We're providing two persisters, a sync storage persistor and an async storage persistor, but you can also write your own on top of it. As I already said, we have put support for React 18 in there. Version 3 just has a support in a way that it doesn't break with peer dependencies, but it doesn't really have support for the new concurrent features of React 18. We've done that in version 4 by using the using external store hook. And we have some smaller changes to the APIs that we try to streamline because they have accumulated over time with lots of flags. We try to make that better and also try to choose better default values that we think will make the user experience and developer experience even better. So yeah, I can't say come check it out right now because it's not there yet, but you can check out the beta version if you want of React Query. And then very soon we will launch the TanStack branded version of it. And then obviously, like the other libraries, we can go agnostic. So there will be adapters for Vue, Svelte, and likely Solid. For Vue and Svelte, I know they already exist as community packages, and we're going to integrate them into the TanStack into the monorepo. Yep, that's
Cool.
all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Yay.
Yeah, so I don't have any sort of presentation or anything to share my screen, but I can say that over here at Remix, we've been working on a couple of really cool things. So for one, we had our conference this last May, and we haven't officially announced this yet, so this is the first place you're hearing this, but we are going to be holding RemixConf. Well, okay, so we did announce that we're holding RemixConf 2023. That was, we announced that at the conference. But as far as like when, we just said sometime in May. So now you know, I can tell you that RemixConf is going to be the week of May 7th. So, and it's going to be a 2-day conference, 1 day of workshop. And so, yeah, block out the week of May 7th on your calendar to come to RemixConf 2023. It's going to be bigger, better, not badder. It'll be better, bigger and better and awesomer than ever. And then as far as the technology itself, Remix is very soon going to have, or we're going to finish the work on remixing React Router. So we're bringing a lot of features from Remix into React Router. We could also call that unreacting React Router, because like the TanStack, we are taking all of the cool things from Remix and React Router and framework agnosticizing it. And so you will relatively soon be able to use Remix with whatever UI library that you want. We will build official support for Vue and Preact, and then you could build your own thing for Solid and Svelte or whatever else you want to. So that is exciting work. And we're also working on the streaming APIs. So you can currently use React 18 streaming with Remix. Remix didn't need to change anything for you to be able to do that when React 18 came out. But we are taking advantage of the streaming APIs with our deferred API. And we actually just shipped yesterday one of the pre-release of React Router with the deferred API built into the router. Because the new version of React Router is also a data management library as well. And so, yeah, we built, added the deferred API to that, and then we're going to very soon ship the deferred API to Remix, so you can stream from the backend. And it's amazing, but I've been talking too long, so I'm not going to talk any more about that. So look forward to that. It's going to be really cool. We've got a couple other really cool things coming, and we're experimenting with. Yeah, we can talk about that more later.
Cool. Do you guys have publish your roadmap or stuff anywhere?
Yeah, so all of our discussions with the community happen on the GitHub discussions on our repo. We don't really have a public roadmap per se, and maybe eventually we'll put one together, but yeah, we just haven't done that.
Too stressful anyways.
Yeah, yeah. We talk a lot. One unique thing about Remix is we have our early supporters, the people who paid when Remix was a paid thing. There are like 500 people there, and so we talk a lot with them to kind of flesh out ideas before we bring it out into the open. That way, we don't have situations where we make this announcement of this idea and then everybody comes up in arms and it's like, well, it was just an idea. Like, chill, it's fine. We're not going to do it, I guess.
Is it the Remix working group?
Yeah, it's kind of like a Remix working group. Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Who wants to go next?
Sure. Let's see. So things are sort of quiet over in Redux land right now. We shipped React Redux version 8 a few months ago, and actually that's been very quiet, which is a wonderful thing. We've had basically no meaningful bug reports. I actually just upgraded my work app to that a couple weeks ago. I think there were a couple of very, very minor TypeScript issues, but given that we kind of swapped the guts of it, we migrated it to TypeScript and everything else. The fact that there's no news is really
congratulations.
Good news.
Congratulations. For those of you who don't know, when I was talking to Mark, it was a 2019 PR, right?
No, that would be Redux version 5, which I'll talk to in a second.
Okay.
we did the TypeScript migration last summer. Actually, the community contributed a lot of that. And then I worked with Andrew Clark on fleshing out the new use sync external store hook, and React Redux version 8 was really the testing ground for that.
So exciting.
We also shipped RTK 1.8 a few months ago, which has the new listener middleware, which is intended to be a simpler alternative for side effects instead of sagas and observables. And frankly, that's gotten a better reception than I would have actually expected. A bunch of folks have said they're using it and they love it. Things we have coming down the road. So we are slowly working on an RTK 1.9. That's going to be mostly some new options and tweaks for RTK query. We're hoping to give the ability to customize how you generate cache keys and serialize them, and the ability to potentially merge data into incoming cache entries. Right now, like if you try to pass in, I don't know, like a session ID or something, you probably don't want that as part of your cache key. So the idea was you would have the ability to strip that out. And then right now, requests always replace existing data. And depending on the use case, you might want to merge into an existing cache entry when you refetch. Couple small TS improvements. We're going to add a deprecation warning for the object syntax for the extra reducers option in create slice. That just really doesn't work well with TypeScript. It was a great feature when we first shipped the library, but we really want to encourage people to use the builder syntax instead because it works much better with TypeScript. While they're not necessarily slated for 1.9, there's a couple open proof of concept PRs to have suspense support for RTK query and the ability to have like multiple queries being suspended at once. No strict ETA on this. We're working on this very slowly, maybe in the next couple months, hopefully. And then once we do ship that, we hope to turn around and work on RTK 2, which would have really no new meaningful features, but instead be a cleanup and breaking changes kind of a thing. Dropping support for IE11, rethinking some of our build output file formats using the export field in package.json for ESM compatibility, dropping the Immer ES5 compat shim, and then getting to what Tracy said. If you look at the Redux repo, we converted it to TypeScript in 2019 and never shipped it. So eventually that needs to be Redux version 5, and it would make sense to ship a Redux 5 that is built in TypeScript together with RTK 2.0 at the same time. Hopefully that won't break things too badly, and we'll find out when we get there.
I'm calling all TypeScript experts. Go talk to Mark on Twitter. He could use some help. Cool. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Sure.
Let me see if I can share my screen. Maybe. Possibly. Maybe not. I'm getting that, hey, we need permission to share. That's okay. We're gonna bypass that. Couple things on the AWS Amplify side. So for those of you that are unaware, AWS Amplify is a way for front-end developers to get up to speed on AWS. I think there's no shortage of folks with the understanding that AWS has traditionally been super hard for a front-end developer to access just because of the sheer amount of services that we offer, back-end tailored infrastructure and other tooling. But AWS Amplify is kind of here to solve that. So 2 new features that we have going on. The first one is going to be Amplify Studio, is our graphical user interface that folks can use to drag and drop their applications if you use Netlify, Vercel, etc. to host your apps. Very similar in that regard. The one added benefit, though, is that you can now design your files in Figma, take that link that you would typically share with your other designer friends, and instead paste that into Amplify, and we will generate all of the React components for you. So it's a pixel perfect one-to-one, and it stays in sync in the sense that if your designer were to modify the colors and the spacing, etc., they press sync, and then the developer can pull those down, and it's all managed via Amplify Studio. Pretty cool. The thing that I think folks really like about that is the components. They're modifiable, they're human readable. It's not that sort of long syntax of code that gets minified and unable to be read. But we take it a step further, and we also now have a GA support for our UI components themselves. So how we scaffold out those components ends up getting bundled up and created inside of a UI library, and folks can now install that inside of their applications. So if you don't use Figma, all good. Amplify also has its own Chakra UI, Theme UI style library that you can check out over at our docs. It's great, and it's sort of easy to use if you're coming from those other realms of front-end development. So that's what we got on the front-end side. I'll pass it off.
That's really exciting. I'm so glad that I've been seeing a lot of really great hires and people like focused on AWS education and documentation for front-end developers, because I feel like most of us have been like screaming for it for like a few years now. So very excited about that. Paige, your face is like, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's such, AWS is one of the first platforms that I really got started with, but it's such an intimidating one because there are so many potential pitfalls and bells and whistles to uncover that any documentation and people who are helping to spread that knowledge is, you know, thumbs up in my book all around.
It's like sighs of relief. Every time I see somebody like joining AWS to help on developer education, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Thank you. So no, we're excited, Michael, obviously. So Paige, since you're unmuted, do you have any updates for us?
Sure. So for anybody who isn't familiar, last fall, I wrote and released a course with a company called Newline that is all about modernizing enterprise React applications because they're big, they're long-lived usually, and they might not be following all of the best practices that include things like unit testing, end-to-end testing, using design libraries, going from components that are stateful to functional components and using hooks. So since the new hooks and React 18 has come out, I have not done any updates that are available for users yet, but it is something that I'm definitely working on, potentially some new modules and some updates to the existing course. So just stay tuned because there will be things coming in the future for that.
That's definitely exciting. I feel like we actually just did a podcast on Modern Web. For those of you who listen to Modern Web podcast, it will be coming soon with Jay Phelps. And we were talking about, you know, the new React, the modern React. It's funny that we call it modern, whereas like, you know, 5 years ago, it was like, oh, look, it's the modern web. So it's just been really interesting from a React perspective to kind of try and like figure out what the new best practices are and how to do it the right way now with all these new features and everything. Speaking of which, Shruti was very involved in that with the React 18 working group. Shruti, do you have any quick updates for us?
Sure. Hey, everyone. So for React 18 working group, those of you who don't know, React team spun up a working group, which is a group of people from the community, educators, library builders, who got together to understand the new updates of React and help other people in the community kind of also understand it. While React 18 was in alpha stage and beta stage, we were going through what the updates are going to be, posting questions. There were some really cool threads that came out of those discussions. All of those discussions are available on GitHub. If you just Google React 18 working group, you'll find them out. Right now, we're kind of in a sleeping mode. React 18 has been released, and so the working group is now just chilling.
That's great. Chilling is good. Chilling is good. You know, go help Mark on the TypeScript. Cool. Awesome. Well, I wanted to go ahead and pass it off to my co-host, Tom, who will be starting the panel discussions. Thank you, folks on YouTube who have been putting in a few different questions. We'll get to them shortly. But Tom, I wanted to let you kick it off.
Thanks, Tracy. So first question I have, I think it really overlaps well with one that CPEE in chat asked. And that's, so has you really excited? What are you really loving in the React ecosystem right now? What's, other than your own things, which you've given excellent updates on, of course. And I'd also ask, on the flip side, what's kind of driving you nuts? The things that are like, I can't believe it's been this many years in React, and we still haven't figured out thing. So open it up to all of you.
Silence.
No one's excited. No one's driven crazy.
Okay, I will go
Everything is
first. I'm a little thrown. Like, other than your own library, it's like literally all I'm doing ever is using this. But I can say that that suspense for data fetching and streaming in React 18 has been really awesome. You put together a nice API with Remix, and it makes it easy to use, but just the concept itself has proven to be really, really helpful. In particular, what Remix gives you is just this really nice API to use it, and what it allows you to do is to easily switch between the trade-offs of time to first byte and content layout shift. So if you have a really great time to first byte, but you have like a slow backend or something, then you're going to be showing loading spinners, right? And then you have content layout shift when that finally comes in. But if you focus on, let's get rid of the content layout shift, then it could be a slow time to first byte because that's slow backend. Now, of course, the solution is make that backend not slow, and then you can have good on both of these things. But if for some reason you can't do that, or it's like computationally expensive, whatever, then what suspense for data fetching and streaming allow you to do is get the best of both worlds, or at least like move this lever on those trade-offs to find the thing that's the best. And in particular, what streaming allows you to do is normally, if you're just doing client-side stuff, you have to get all the JavaScript on the page and everything running and hydrated before you trigger the requests for the data. And so you get this waterfall. But with streaming, you actually trigger the request to get the data from the server. And so as soon as the user requests the document or starts the transition to the next page, we instantly can start going to get that data. And we're squishing things over to the left in the network tab. And so not only does it give you a better control over that time to first byte versus content layout shift, but it also speeds up the entire process of loading that data. So that is one thing that I am particularly loving at the moment from React.
I finally have had a chance to actually at least get my feet wet with suspense within the last few weeks. So the app that I work on, Replay, is like the polar opposite of the app that Kent just described. Our app is basically the Firefox DevTools as an app in the browser. So it's a very long-lived single-page application. But we do a lot of data fetching from the back end over the course of the app. And one of my teammates is Brian Vaughn, who used to be on the React core team and did a lot of work with the React DevTools. And over the last couple months, we've been doing a lot of work to try to figure out how to throw away a lot of our legacy code and rebuild it because it's a pain to work with. And Brian and I have both been going off and doing some prototyping work. And Brian is used to working with suspense and this idea of a suspense cache for managing data fetching. And so he started building some prototype, like miniature versions of pieces of our app and writing these suspense caches for managing the data fetching. If you've seen any of the previous React team demos of this idea, the idea is that in your component, you just say like const data equals my suspense cache dot read or some similar looking function call. And if the data isn't there, magic happens that I'm going to skip over. Eventually, React re-renders your component when the data is there, and now it looks to your component like that data always existed. And in the meantime, it floats up to the nearest suspense boundary, and you can show a loading spinner or whatever. So it's been interesting for me watching Brian try to write some of these suspense caches because the concept isn't really documented at all yet. And so a couple weeks ago, I actually went through and tried to write a suspense cache that was backed by RTK query for doing the actual data fetching and then wrapping a suspense cache around it for use in a React component. I actually got it working. Like, I'd always thought it was possible, but I didn't have proof until I tried. So I'm still just sort of trying to learn how this stuff works myself, but I can definitely see a lot of the potential involved in it.
I think I should mention that even inside of Remix, it's not just about that initial page load, but also about transitions between different routes on a long-lived app. So it is exciting just in general, for sure.
I can go next. I think something that I'm really loving at the moment, it's not one particular library, it's this acceptance of, hey, CSS is tricky, but I'm noticing that there's this larger movement towards putting out amazing articles on how to get started with raw CSS. Libraries have integrations on how do you put in Tailwind or Chakra or Amplify. Sorry, I shouldn't have plugged my own stuff there. And all of this stuff into your applications. And I love seeing it because front-end developers were always sort of, yeah, I work on the front end, I just don't make it look pretty. And now it's like, no, this is actually a part of our job. And we have this huge community that has already like been here forever of people developing great CSS content that we can now take advantage of. That part is what I love. I love seeing it. I love working with all the different UI libraries that are out here. And then on the other side of things, to answer the question of like, what is driving me crazy? It's the whole single page versus multi-page. I thought multi-page was just like what we called things in the before anyways. And I keep thinking like, these PHP devs just have to be laughing at us. Because one day we're gonna figure it out and they're gonna be like, yeah, that was 20 years ago that we had that. So getting on that page where, no pun intended, of everybody just saying, yeah, this is the way that we are going to make our applications. I don't care which one it is personally, I really don't. And I think our customers don't either. So once we get to that level of, okay, this is what it is, and then we're just going to roll with that, is a day that I'm honestly and earnestly looking forward to.
Dude, you gotta try Remix.
I've tried Remix, and Remix is great. But it's one of the many options out there, right? And sometimes you get into another set of problems. It's like everyone's like, I found the perfect solution, and no shame on Remix. Again, I love it. But then like there's another library that also does similar things, and so I'm still trying to like, well, then which is the library?
Oh my gosh! But like, which is the library? React, Angular, Vue, Solid.
Yeah.
Svelte.
And then you pick one, and you're like, all right, that's great, but what is the framework now? So it's like
so funny.
Well, I mean, like I said, we're going to support any of those UI libraries in the near future. So the framework is Remix, the UI library is whatever. I don't care.
Oh my gosh.
You heard it here, folks. The debate is over. Debate is over.
You're pitching me these softballs. Sorry, I got to respond.
But Kent, you also have to be able to support the non-JS frameworks. You need to be able to support Hugo. You need to be able to support Jekyll. You need to be able to support some of these other ones that are still there, 11D.
Yeah, you know, actually, I'm more interested in supporting use cases than technologies, and so I think that as neat as it is that Remix will support these other frameworks, it's more like just happening naturally, and it was never really a huge priority for us, except that we did hire somebody who really liked Vue a lot, and so he pushed us to do this. But I mean, like, we're glad that we're doing it. But yeah, I'm much more interested in like, let's think about the use cases, and a lot of the pre-existing solutions aren't really necessary anymore because the problem doesn't exist when you're using Remix. Not to call out any particular solution, but yeah, a lot of problems are just eliminated. And so when somebody comes to you and says, well, you know, they've been riding a horse and you're showing them a car, and they start asking you like, where's the pooper scooper? It's like that problem doesn't exist with this thing. We've got other problems, but but that problem doesn't exist with this one.
That's a great analogy.
That
Kind
maybe
of on a
sorry.
Go ahead.
So, okay, so what I wanted to say on that kind of relates a bit to this is a library that I've been, well, not really using yet, but I have heard really great things about it. And yesterday there was a stream from Theo with the creator Alex, and that library is TRPC. In case you haven't heard of it, it's a library that basically allows you to write a function on the backend and then call it on the front end to give you the data that this function returns. And all of this gives you end-to-end type safety without having to write any schemas or any code generations, compilation step in between. The demos that I've seen, they were really stunning. And from version 10 that they're going to release really soon, they're also going agnostic, which is also a big move at the moment, I think, which I also love. Obviously, the TanStack is doing it, Remix is doing it, and TRPC is doing it as well. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to trying out, and also encouraging everyone else to try out. Yes, the React layer is made with React Query, and that might be why I also like it, but it's generally a really, really good tool to have.
Yeah, that front or back to front type safety is nuts. And we just added some very similar type of functionality of type inference across the network layer to Remix. That'll be released next week. And it is like when you add Prisma to this, where Prisma like gets you type safety from the database, and then you can go all the way to the front end with that, like this is the stuff that have people like salivating over GraphQL and Apollo and all of that stuff. And now we can have that with a little less complexity, I think, which is pretty exciting.
I think that's really the key, is that all of the complexity that used to have to be part of setting up any project or maintaining projects is really going away. You don't have to manage your own Webpack configs anymore. You don't have to necessarily worry about your TS configs or your ES lints. All of that stuff that makes it so hard and makes it take longer to get to the actual building of the application that you want to make is being taken care of for us. That's probably one of the most exciting things about all the stuff that's coming out now, is that it works really quickly right out of the box, and you don't have to do a whole lot of setup or know all about the intricacies of everything to get it to that point.
And also that
That
it's
actually,
not all, oh, sorry. I'm
go
talking
ahead,
too much.
Ken.
I was just going to say, now we have ES build and it's like crazy fast. So we don't have to use Webpack anymore.
That actually reminds me that one of the things that I'm loving at the moment is actually no library at all, but it's actually the development environment that we have at Slack. So this is my first month at Slack, so I'm still starting to like understand how it's working. But one of the things that I love is like, in order to run your development environment or like get anything set up, there's literally just like one line of code you write in your terminal, and it starts your VS Code. It pulls down everything. It sets up a dev environment, and it opens up your VS Code with all of the settings that you need. So as soon as you start typing code, your remote dev environment is updated, and it's so fast. Like you feel like you're working on local, but it's actually on the dev environment. And the coolest thing I found yesterday was, if somebody else, like if your coworker wants to work with you, they can connect to your environment, and you can see their changes in real time in your code environment without having to do any kind of git pull or anything. It's amazing.
Wow, I want that at my work.
I know. It's so cool.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, so many exciting things happening. Tom, I'll let you keep going on with the panel questions.
Sure. Let's see, what would be a good, well, we talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to get maybe a broader view of it. We all complained a bit about having Webpack configs to set up and figuring out those sorts of build steps. And I remember getting started years ago. I could not learn React until after Create React came out, because every time I tried, I would try to set up a Webpack config from some blog post somewhere, and it never worked, ever. So I was very grateful when they came out with that. But we're also starting to see more tools aside from Webpack ES Build. We've got Vite, we've got all of these other things. And in the same way, I think we're starting to see some decoupling, like with TanStack, like with Remix, where things are not hooked just into React. Are we also going to be seeing more of a decoupling from some of these tools, where not only does it not matter whether you're using Webpack or Vite or whatever, but you don't even need to know? How do all of you see this unfolding?
To me, that seems like I think that's the way that it's going to go, honestly, because like I was saying earlier, I don't think that there's a whole lot of developers who really enjoy that part of the process. So the less that I have to do on my own and the more that I can just depend on a framework, a library, somebody else to make most of those decisions for me so that I can actually get to the point of writing code and seeing things on the screen, that is totally fine with me. And I know that there's a lot of cases where you won't be able to use what's right out of the box, but I think for the vast majority of developers and the vast majority of use cases, that will be something that is possible. So I'm happy with that kind of magic. Let me get to building cool components and writing new pages and doing fun stuff in the browser, and I'll let somebody else deal with the underlying things that, make it work and make it magic, but I don't need to know exactly how they're doing it.
Yeah, 100% agree with Paige. I was talking about it a little bit earlier with these UI libraries coming together. To expand on that a little bit, at AWS we call it undifferentiated heavy lifting, which is all of the hard stuff that doesn't matter. So as long as you can push that off to a framework, a library, a tooling, a really cool dev environment like Shruti has set up, then it makes your life that much easier, and it just accelerates what it is that you're actually trying to build. I think back in the day, we spent so much time trying to get React even set up that it took away from our experience of what we were trying to build in the first place. So I love seeing all the consolidation in the ecosystem these days, and it's only going to get better.
So maybe a tangential question, but maybe a little bit related from chat. Thoughts on Bun, the new runtime package manager, Swiss Army knife? Seems like it's blowing a lot of people's minds, Kent's included.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to actually try it yet, but just watching the amount of effort that the creator Jared Sumner is putting into it, he's put a crazy amount of attention to detail in identifying things that are slow, such as copying files and extracting them during installation, or WebSocket message handling and things, or HTTP request serving and things like that, and has done a ton of optimization work to make that stuff fast. Does this guarantee that the tool is going to be a massive success? No. And the fact that it is a one-person effort so far is a little bit scary. But the fact that someone actually has taken the time to put in that much effort to try to make a new alternative JavaScript runner, bundler, transpiler, package installer, Swiss Army knife is really very impressive, and it has a lot of potential. I mean, we've been talking over the last couple of minutes about how ES Build is a lot faster than Webpack, and I've seen some people like Sunil Pai talk about, like, when your bundler is that fast, it changes the way you do development. And if Bun can potentially make a lot of other operations faster, it could also have a similar effect on development process.
Yeah, so Bun is not so fast, and what's neat about that is you can compile on request, and in the future, I mean, we already have Dino, and it's much faster than Node, and it supports TypeScript, and so you could have a buildless thing with Dino, and they released their fresh thing that is zero build. Ryan has been experimenting with what a zero build remix would be like. And the cool thing about zero build is you can deploy in 10 seconds. Like, it's just how long it takes to upload the new files. It's it's awesome. So I'm really excited about the zero build thing. And with Bun, it's even faster. We one of our engineers, Jacob, put together Bun deployed in a Docker container on Fly, running Remix, and you'd get response times of 20 milliseconds. It's like, it's outrageous. Like, when it's less than 200 milliseconds, it actually doesn't matter. But what's cool about that is it means that you can handle more traffic with less resources. And so, yeah, Bun, I am very excited about it. I love how fast it installs dependencies. That would be like a marked improvement on my development life. So yeah, super here for Bun. Also, a little concerned that it's only one person, but I think it's only possible to accomplish what he has so far because it was one person. No meetings, no arguments, no, like, he just does everything, whatever he wants, and he can get things done really fast. Now, eventually, if we want to like build on it into the future, then we probably are going to need to have some of those arguments and meetings. But for right now, I think having it be just one person is the reason why it's as great as it is.
So Remix really takes the 90s seriously by, like, you could copy some files on an FTP and it would just work.
Yeah.
Not only from the technologies, but it sounds really amazing, the zero bundling and deployment. I was also excited about Bun. I haven't tried it yet. I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and there's the old joke, when you come back from vacation 2 weeks later, nothing is the same in the JavaScript frontend environment. But I really love to try it out. I was also excited about Roam tools when they said they were going to give you this one-stop shop of things that you could use and are very fast. I don't know what happened to Roam. I haven't really heard a lot lately, but Bun really sounds like it's also picking up from there a bit and pushing it over the edge. Yeah, the fact that it's just one person. I think I've read a tweet from him where he said that he has everything in his head right now, which is amazing. Just to, must be so much code. But knowing all the dependencies, the architecture, and it's getting to a point where he really also needs to offload to other people. And now that there is an initial release, I think lots of people will happily contribute to that endeavor.
It's just like,
Yeah,
so.
I had made the mistake of subscribing to the Bun repo while I just all the notifications while it was still in early private release, and the day that it went live, it went from like 5 issues a day to like 75, and I had to unsubscribe.
I love that. It's just so exciting to me. Like, I feel like 2020, I was like, what's new? And then just, in the past year or so, we're just seeing so much excitement and so much new innovation and just like fresh love and excitement and innovation happening within our community, which is just very, very, very exciting. And I'm so happy for it. Well, we have a few other questions. Tom, did you want to choose another one? Me too.
I've got feel free, Tracy. I've been given all the questions.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. I like the hook question. You can go ahead.
Oh,
choose it.
Okay. Well, I've got one for Paige specifically, asking if you've made updates to your course for React 18 and the changes that brought.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but not yet. The course originally came out back in, I think, October or November of this past year. So it's, 6 or 7 months old at this point. And then React 18 got finalized in March. So there are things that I'm working on. I just haven't gotten anything updated and finalized and pushed out yet. But there will probably be some new modules around some of these new hooks that have become available. Maybe some of the server-side rendering options that are now, part of components. Just haven't gotten to it quite yet. But yeah, it's definitely in the works. But a lot of what my course teaches is not necessarily specific to a particular version of React. It's also about the larger best practices for building long-lived, reliable web applications. So it's things like how to add in unit testing and automation. It's how to work with component libraries. It's how to set up your development environment so that you've got the right tools like linting and prettier and code formatting and all the things like that. So while it is tailor-made for React and going from stateful components to stateless and using hooks, there's a lot of other stuff that is more generically appropriate and still really relevant to today's software methods.
That's excellent. I might have to check out that course myself, because it's always good to see a great overview of the entire app lifecycle that isn't just narrowed down on one specific, like, here's a Medium article for that one thing you wanted to do, and the rest, good luck.
Yeah.
So we recently had a debate in our Slack channel at this dot that generated 111 replies. So it got interesting. But what kicked it off was a code snippet found in a library that was a use something. Doesn't really matter. It was a hook, but when you read it, it's not really a hook. It didn't do hook things. It was just somebody had been reading React code and was like, oh, everything starts with the word use, so I guess my function should start with the word use. And we got on the topic of, well, what really makes a hook a hook? How do you know that your hooks are hooks, that they're doing hook things? It seems like something that someone new to React could easily get confused around. So how would all of you try and explain something like this to someone who's less well-versed in React? Kent's raised his hand.
I've got a very simple definition for what a hook is. A hook is a function that uses other hooks. That's it.
Somewhere in that call stack, it needs to call one of the actual hooks built into React. It might be through some other custom hook, but if it doesn't ultimately result in at least one hook from React being called, it's not actually a hook.
I think it's comparable to how a component at the end of the day needs to render one of the primitives of React, like a div or a button. On top of that, that's just components and abstractions that you make on purpose. And that's like the custom hooks that you make. And if you expand it, at the end of the day, it's all just divs and buttons and whatnot. And then the hooks that are built in, use state, hopefully not use effect, but maybe even use effect, and so on. Even though I have to admit, I have also at least once created a function that started with use and didn't use a hook underneath it, because I think I wanted it to be limited to be used in functional components, because I anticipated I was going to need a use memo or something a bit later on. So I wanted to make that refactoring that comes later a little bit easier. But it's definitely not something that you do on a daily basis, I guess.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to that, if you find yourself reusing the same set of hooks or kind of trying to mimic the same functionality from one component into another in React, that's probably a good use case for a hook. You can extract that function out into its own custom hook and then be able to just call it wherever you need it, and it'll do essentially the same things. But from my experience, a lot of times when you see people kind of creating custom hooks before they need to, a lot of that is business logic or just application logic that probably doesn't necessarily need to be in a hook. It just needs to be in a utility function somewhere that any part of the application could call, regardless of if it's running React hooks or if it's maybe on server side or somewhere else. It's probably worth a second look if it really needs to be a custom hook or not at that point.
Yes, the ever popular utils.js.
What about like returning something from the hook? Do you think that's a necessary condition for it to be a hook?
I would say yes. It doesn't necessarily need to be a lot. It could just be some Booleans. It could be some really simple state information. It could be just an array or an object. But I would say, yeah, I mean, that's that's generally what most of the React hooks do in some way, shape, or form.
I disagree. You could have a hook that updates the document title, for instance, and you just pass it what you want the document title to be. You don't need anything back from that.
Or like a use persist or something like that.
But I think that is one of the difficult parts about hooks, is that you don't actually know what they're going to do unless they are super well named or you look into them. Right? A hook could be just an effect that updates the title and does nothing else. Or it could be something that continuously re-renders your component for some reason because it's a subscription to something else. So kind of the difference, if you know React Query, there's use query and use query client. Use query creates a subscription. Use query client just gives you something, reads from React context, never triggers a re-render. So you don't really know what a hook does just by calling the hook. It's not really like, there's no recipe for what a hook is eventually going to do. And I think that makes it a bit hard to understand. When is it a hook or what's the hook going to do?
I always find it interesting that one of the core concepts of hooks is just understanding functions, and a lot of the same principles still apply. Good practices there. Having the use whatever it is be well named, having it encapsulate a core set of logic here, and like Paige was saying, if it's reusable, maybe it doesn't even need to be a hook. Maybe it could be extracted into a separate function altogether. But to circle it back to what Kent was saying, if it has a hook inside of it, then it's a hook. It's a custom hook. But oftentimes when educating folks on what the principles and the rules are with hooks, we typically just have a larger conversation around JavaScript as a whole, because that typically brings in some kind of other conversation where they can be educated on just some of the basic principles.
Very, very, very slightly off this, I want to put in a plug for 2 articles that I find myself very frequently linking to people to explain this stuff. One is Tyler McGinnis wrote a post that is hosted on UI.dev called Why React Hooks? And it talks about the problems that we had dealing with class components, why the React team invented hooks in the first place, and what problems they're meant to solve. And then Sean Swix Wong did a blog post and a talk a while back called Getting Closure on React Hooks. And he builds a miniature working version of React Hooks live in a 30-minute talk. And if you've ever wondered, what are hooks? How do they work internally? Why do they have some of these rules that I have to follow? That talk and post are very, very informative.
That's awesome. There's so much to talk about here, and I wish we could keep talking forever, but unfortunately we are at time. This has been really amazing. There's so many questions that haven't been answered, but everybody besides Kent, but I mean, Kent, you just know his Twitter handle anyway, so he doesn't need to put it there. But no, everybody's Twitter handles is here. So, feel free to continue the conversation on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter and you're in tech, highly recommend just joining Twitter, and you have 6, 7, 8 friends that will say hi to you already. So Twitter is a great place to continue these conversations. All these folks here also have really amazing projects that they're working on. So definitely check out some of the open source projects or some of the different projects that these folks are generally involved in, and come hang out in open source. Yeah. And Swix is amazing too. So people have been saying in chat how to actually spell Sean's name, Sean's Twitter handle. So, you can follow him at Swix for some amazing stuff as well. So thank you again for everyone who's listening. And if you want to find out more about these events, you can always sign up to this.co/newsletter to find out about our events, or this meetup event is specifically posted on reactjsmeetup.com. So you can check that out too. All right. See y'all very soon. Thank you.